Okay. Hi, everybody. Welcome back. And I'm just thrilled when people tune in to listen to not so much me, but some words of somebody who really knows quite a bit about what's going on. And that's my guru. I've been an earnest disciple for 40 plus years of a spiritual teacher named Gururaj Ananda Yogi, who was active from the late 70s to the mid 80s. And with some of the participants, I was just joking about how long ago that was. And it was a long time ago. And I'll say I do readings of the satsangs. I've been doing about one reading a month. And then I provide some commentary. And I feel a little presumptuous offering commentary on a really spectacularly wonderful spiritual teacher. Especially nowadays, lots of people know a lot about meditation. Everybody's done at their yoga studio, they've learned basic meditation, or they've taken meditation with my American Meditation Society, which is the group I belong to for these 40 years. Or they've learned a little bit about Buddhism, or they're do kirtan and do some kind of Indian-based spiritual practice, or they're Christians of various denominations, or they've gone back to the Jewish heritage, or they're doing all kinds of things. Spirituality, I think, is very prevalent. When my teacher, Gururaj Ananda Yogi, was teaching in the, as I said, in the early 80s, there was not that much knowledge in this country. Buddhism had arrived, the Tibetan Buddhists had just arrived in this country. Chogyam Trungpa was teaching. I started out in Zen all those many years ago. There was a little bit of interest in Sufism, a little bit of interest in other religions, but not a lot. And we didn't know much of anything. We were all in our 20s back then. Gururaj, although he was from an Indian background, and he uses a lot of Vedanta terminology or Indian spiritual terms. And I don't think he was that familiar with Buddhism. He knew the Gospels quite well. And he was, now that I've studied this stuff for 40 plus years, he was extremely conversant with a number of pretty profound aspects of spiritual traditions. However, he said he was a universalist. And he wanted to teach spirituality that was common to all the faiths. He said he had no interest in trying to dissuade people from whatever their religious traditions, or no religious, just their philosophical positions. However, he said that he insisted that the way to achieve some kind of happiness was something he called self-realization, and that is obtained by, as we all call it in our group, meditation and spiritual practices. And he taught, had us learn a fairly basic group of spiritual practices. And when we would go to courses that lasted from a few days to about 10 days, which were wild and very intense, and lots of things went on courses, including he gave several satsangs, or spiritual talks, a day. At the time, a lot of us couldn't tell. Sometimes we thought he was incredible and really profound. And sometimes we just thought he was just nuts. We didn't really understand what he was talking about. And my position is that all these years later, I realized, oh my God, they were much more profound than I was aware of at the time. And he was referring to some quite sophisticated things, as well as a lot of very common, ordinary things. He gave plenty of advice about relationships and everyday life and how to make yourself happier in your everyday life. But the foundation of all of it was the spiritual journey, which he considered a journey towards self-realization. That is a term from Indian philosophy. The Buddhists have a term, enlightenment, that everybody's familiar with, and a currently word that's a buzzword is awakening, was being used in current spirituality. In this particular satsang I'm going to read, it's one he gave fairly late in his teaching career. It's from 1987. It's one of these satsangs that at first blush, you kind of go through, oh, that's all right. That's a pretty good one. Yeah, I get it. Well, you don't. I read it, and at first I thought, oh yeah, I don't even know if I want to use this one. It's just too quick. It's too brief. It's very short. He doesn't seem to get in anything there. Then, of course, I read it again, and then I read it again, and then I always take these transcripts. Some members of our group did the heroic job of making all the transcripts, verbatim transcripts, and making them in a long form. By the way, his snippets of his videos are also available on YouTube if you want to see him talk. He had a magnificent voice. So in any case, I would look at the verbal transcripts, and I usually cleaned up some of his grammar, and he had a delightful but somewhat eccentric way of using what he called the Queen's English. He had a very strong English accent. But he nevertheless used a little odd ways of phrasing, and I'd clean them up a little bit. But boy, am I aware of not over-editing them, because I'm not the guru, and I don't want to subtly alter some of the things he's saying for fear of me missing some of the deeper aspects of what he's getting at. And they are fairly deep. And I'm going to say a little bit about here. I'm been doing spiritual practice in various disciplines for about 40 years. So I spent about 15 years with the Tibetan Buddhists. I spent a number of years with the Zen Buddhists. I'm very familiar with Vedanta, and especially the Advaita Vedanta, which is the non-dual Vedanta. I've read the Ramakrishna literature. I know the Ramana Maharshi, the Saragata, and all of these people I know fairly well. So I feel I have some kind of basis to make some commentary on what our guru is getting at. Because at the time when he said these things, a lot of us had not done years and years and years of meditation and reading and reflection and all this. Most of us listening to this video have been doing these spiritual practices for 20, 30, or maybe more years. But I'm trying to make these videos to make his teachings available to a wider audience, especially in an audience now that are fairly sophisticated with some of the concepts in spirituality and meditation. So this particular satsang, which I'm starting now, again, he would always give these satsangs without any preparation, spontaneously, based on questions from the audience. And he would intersperse them with a lot of his wild humor. He always was fishing these outrageously bad jokes out of a little pocket in his tunic, and he'd read these things. I've edited out most of the jokes, as delightful as they are, because I want to publish this thing for a larger audience eventually. In any case, this satsang, I got the impression from reading the transcript, was one late at night, and after possibly he had done the official satsang, and somebody he asked one more question. And one of the other chelas, and I know who it is, it doesn't matter actually who he is. The chela asked a seemingly, I'm going to be a little unfair, and I'm going to say it sounds like a pseudo-sophisticated question. One of these deep spiritual type questions. And it's one that those of us who've been doing this for a number of years, my God, we've heard variations on this question a lot. So the chela, his name was Chetan, by the way, who asked this question. He says, the chela asked, Gururaj, what is silence? For we spiritual sophisticos, or we spiritual hipsters, that's a loaded question. And I was thinking about how I would like to present this, because it's a fairly short satsang. And I think I'm going to present it, first of all, a little joke. I call it being the guru from hell. I'm going to be the guru from hell. Meaning I'm going to consider myself, there are so many spiritual teachers out now. My God, the internet, hundreds of them. So many people. I guess I am one too, but at least I'm not trying to promote myself as some big guru. I'm doing his stuff. So this is the guru from hell. So the chela would ask, what is silence? Now I'm going to tell you the answer, and you will agree with it. Silence, my child. Silence, you must go within, discover the inner silence within. And you will be in touch with the eternal spirit. Silence is the same as God. Yes, still the outer thought, still the inner voices of the mind. Retreat to the inner heart of silence. There, my child, you will discover the source of all immortality. Now I could go on and on and on like that stuff. How many of you guys have heard they say, you know, like, forgive me, a guy I admired very much, Adyashanti. They asked him, you know, who is your guru? Or they asked him some question like that. He says, my guru is silence. And we sit back and we go, oh my God, that sounds so profound. His guru is silence. You know, it's a little like he asked, in fact, I was on a Zoom conversation the other day with somebody, and they asked, what's the most important thing in spirituality? And the thing that came up to my head was the stupidest possible. I couldn't even say it. It was so stupid. It was love. It's like, oh, come on. You know, it's like, oh, love. It's, oh, God, everybody. How corny that is. So silence. Oh, come on. It's just, we've all heard this one before. So I did my version of the Guru from Hell. The Guru from Hell, to me, I joking calling it Guru of Hell, because they tell you something that you already know, and it makes it very conceptual. So it becomes a little belief. So you can run around and think to yourself, am I meditating? I don't feel like meditating. Do I really have to? No, I get better. I got to go into the silence. Yeah, that's what I got to do. It's just another set of beliefs, another set of patterns. We make it into that. Is that all there is to it? It's some cliche about the silence. Let's find out what the Guru has to say. Now, my contention is that he always says the entire teaching in the first paragraph. However, we don't get it. It tends to go whoop, right over our heads. Typically, if you don't get a spiritual teaching, what you do is you say, oh, yeah, that's true. That means you didn't get it. It means you didn't get it. So here's what he says. What I do is I read it and I kind of make a few comments. From Gururaj. The question does not involve what silence is. I'll start again. The question does not involve what silence is, but what silence means. If you don't, silence is perfectly obvious. Silence is the absence of noise. But in spirituality, what does that mean? What does silence mean? Gururaj goes on. The meaning of silence can only be found in silence. It's a very famous story about the Buddha. One of his disciples, starts with a name, I can't remember his whole name. The disciples were asking him various questions, and finally he looked and he just held up a flower and didn't say a thing. And the story goes that his one disciple smiled because he got it. Gururaj just said that, just basically the same thing. He said, the meaning of silence can only be found in silence. If you cannot experience silence within yourself, how will you know the value of silence? In the process going on within yourself, can you ever come to know the meaning of that which is silence? In that silence, all recognition is gone. Silence remains silence, and there is no recognition of silence. This is because once you start analyzing the meaning of silence, then your silence is destroyed and it becomes of no value. There's an old teaching in Buddhism, but it also applies to Hinduism. We process this world through the five senses and the sixth sense, which is the mind, the conceptual mind. That's how all phenomenon presents itself to us. If that's the case, if there's no sound going on, are we still hearing? Again, if there is no sound going on, are we still hearing? And you could apply it, if there's nothing to see, are you still seeing? Yeah, of course you are. The sense faculty, the mental faculty of hearing is still going on. It's just there's nothing to hear. But you're still hearing, you're hearing silence. Is this what Gururaj is talking about? If so, that's not very profound. In the process of, I wrote, life within yourself. In the process of life, can you ever come to know the meaning of that which is silent? Like, what does silence? Because in that silence, all recognition is gone. Silence remains silence, and there is no recognition of silence. This is because once you start analyzing the meaning of silence, then your silence is destroyed and becomes of no value. Now, I think he's talking about silence as something different than hearing. When I'm not hearing anything, I'm still hearing. But he's talking about that we have the recognition in this, the kind of silence he's talking about, the recognition is gone. You're not aware of silence. You don't recognize silence. In fact, he's saying, once you start analyzing the meaning of silence, I'm not hearing anything, and you start conceptualizing it, what am I doing? You're paying attention to it. There's no silence. And it becomes of no value, that process that you're going to. So I'm going to say the keynote for me here is recognition or recognizing, becoming aware of. He says the becoming aware of, the recognition of silence, in silence, there is no recognition of silence. That's why you can't become aware of it. So let me read on. You go within yourself in that silence, and yet you do not know yourself that you are silent. For the silence has no answer to itself. Silence is silence. That is a scientific equation, and any scientist here will hear me out. When you merge within yourself in silence, my beloveds, there is no question that will remain, because your very silence, you will not analyze silence at all. That is silence. So be silent and know, as the scriptures say, be still and know that I am God. That's what our scriptures tell us. But I can tell you something more about this. I will teach you how to be silent and yet be conscious of that silence. And this I will write out to all of you as my license to you. To be silent is just a step on this path that leads you further on. It's leading you further on in your silence, so that you must learn to find the in silence within yourself. And then progressing on, you'll find total silence. What the hell is he talking about? I'm going to give something, I'm pretty sure it will be a helpful clue. Gururaj only talked about Patanjali, or Patanjali, but I think it's Patanjali's 8 limbs of yoga. He'd only refer occasionally to Patanjali, but that is one of the basics, understandings that underlie spiritual disciplines in the Vedanta. The 8 limbs of yoga, for those of you who don't know, because I don't want to start talking about Patanjali, is spiritual discipline, or yama, niyama, which is ritual observances, asana, which is postures, pranayama, which we practice in our group, pratyahara, this is key. Gururaj did talk a number of times about pratyahara. It's withdrawing the senses, which means in meditation, we gradually, or actually in my case, it happens episodically. Sometimes we're aware of sounds, senses, we feel, sense things are coming in. Sometimes we're not aware of them. We'll talk about that more in a minute. The next step is dhyana, or concentration, which Gururaj emphasized a lot. And we have a concentration exercise in our group where we train the mind not to be constantly distracted by thoughts, senses, impressions, sensations, not constantly running after these things, but to stay focused on a single point. The classic metaphor, it's a little like we practice something called tratak, which is looking at a candle flame, but more importantly, we look at the after image and we concentrate in the ajna chakra, this candle flame. It teaches the mind not to run after constantly being distracted and lose out, and to be able to focus. The ideal, they say, is to focus like a candle flame in a windless room, just steady flame. Out of this concentration, that's the basis of meditation. Not to be distracted, to be one-pointed. And Gururaj emphasized a lot on what it means to be one-pointed. Out of that is the final stage called samadhi. And that's what I think Gururaj is talking about. He's teaching us, without going into Patanjali, he wants us to be aware of stages of samadhi, which is basically, the term that comes to my mind is meditative absorption. Not to be distracted by sense information, by your constant talk in your head, to fall into, forgive me, the silence. The thoughts might be there. Gururaj has talked about this, but they come and go. Something is steady, calm, and eternal, like a flame. It's our awareness. That's what, without using these kinds of terms, because this was way back when he was introduced, this is what he was having us to do it. Is it possible to be steady, consistent, self-aware, and yet not have any objects of consciousness? What are objects of consciousness? Sense impressions, thoughts, feelings, sensations, emotions are objects. They are things normally actually the awareness is witnessing these objects of perception. You following me? Gururaj is referring to something where you actually are not analyzing, you're not aware. I am quiet in meditation. Most of us are like this most of the time. I'm meditating very quietly and I'm letting my thoughts go, but the I is still there. I'm just going to freeze this. Leading you further on in this silence, you must learn to find the in silence within yourself. And progressing on, you will find total silence. He's talking about samadhi, states of samadhi. Why is it so important to have samadhi? So that you realize the whole rest of all your problems in life are just dreams. In samadhi is discovered the real self. In samadhi, we have an experience of what's real. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Gururaj goes on. So let's define the meaning of silence. What is silence and what is silence? There's ordinary silence, and then there's something else he means by silence. He's not talking about ordinary lack of noise. To be still and to be in your guru's heart, or he in your heart. Is that silence? That's very superficial. The guru leads you to find that divine silence within yourself. He can only lead you there, but it's for you to find that silence. As I said a moment ago, I will endorse the license to lead you there. So what is the process of finding silence within yourself? Let me pause here. Most of us, we are taught in our group called Guru Shakti. In the Buddhists, call it Guru devotion. They mean using the Guru as a source of spiritual insight or energy, not the personality, but the Guru means from darkness to light. It means the principle of spiritual illumination. Use that as a focal point. If it helps you to visualize Guru Raj, he says he's a good focal point. If it helps you Jesus or some other focal point, that's great too, but using the Guru as a focal point. Now, he makes a reference to be still and to be in your Guru's heart, or he in your heart, is that silence. Many of us have a deep devotional experience of surrendering to the Guru or surrendering to divinity, and we feel a wonderful sense of unity with the divine, and it can be very emotional and very uplifting and very wonderful and blissful. And a lot of us really love that feeling of being devoted to the Guru, devoted to the divine, devoted to God, to Krishna, to Jesus. He's saying that's very superficial. He says the purpose of the Guru, which is the divine principle, is just to lead you to find divine silence within yourself. Oh. So it's not about the Guru. He says, no, it's about you. Find the divine silence within you. He says the Guru can lead you there, but it's for you to find that silence. As I said a moment ago, I can endorse the license to lead you there. I think that's a weird phrase that he was using that night. So what is the process of finding this silence within yourself? How do I do it then? Well, there is no process. Silence exists within itself. It cannot be created by anyone in this universe. The process involves following the path of in silence to merge away into silence. Wow. For those of us who've been meditating for many years, me and many of us, you spend years trying to get enlightened, trying to reach self-realization. You can't get there from here. How can you reach non-duality by practicing duality? How can the I escape the I by doing it itself? The Guru, he said, is a vehicle. It's a step. It's a way. The Guru will lead you out of that attainment, trying to do something, efforting to do something. Because guess what? It can't be, the deep silence cannot be created by anything in this universe. It's not something that can be created. It is actually it's a causeless cause. It's, what's the word? Uncreated. That's what the Buddhists love to call it. They say the uncreated thing. It has no birth and no death. There's no time in it. We're all familiar with this lingo. That's what he's talking about here. You can't get that from time. This limited consciousness, you can't create this other kind of consciousness. You have to follow the path of in silence to merge away into silence. I'm telling you truths which you've probably never heard before. I don't know. Who cares in any case? Why would he say something like that? I think it's because all of us are so involved with effort. Every day. Like I meditate 2 hours a day. I do that, and I've done that for close to 25 years. And before that, I meditated, the usual amount of time. I meditate a shitload, a lot. So do I sit down to get something? For a long time, I did. You sit down to put in the hours. It's like working, and putting in, getting a paycheck at the end of the day is going to be self-realization. Gururaj is saying, it's like you maroon. Is that what it's about? He says, I'm telling you truths you've never known before. I don't know. Who cares in any case? Because once you produce a case, as my lawyer friends will confirm, you go into mental gymnastics. And that is not what I want you to do. When you turn it into a goal-oriented activity, what they call gaining practice, you're wasting your time. You're literally like a rat chasing its tail. I want you to merge away within yourself in the silence of divinity. Because in finding that, I can promise all of you that you will surely find that in silence within yourself that will translate into peace within all of you. You see the process, the mechanics? So now he's just going to start horsing around with this, but it's to have a point. I think he's made his essential point here. It's about samadhi. It's not about you. You don't exist in samadhi, by the way. You disappear. You don't even disappear. It's like you never did exist. This is the superconscious level of awareness. We call it in our group, superconscious, which a lot of us, like this boy here, boy, Christ, I spent years thinking about what the hell superconscious is. And I could tell you more philosophical goop, but it doesn't get us anywhere. Mechanics. Do you understand this word? Now, I'm a professor of philology, so I know what I'm talking about. He always horses around. Mech means to make and perform all of your antics. Antics, as in you idiots. The antics of life is what produces all the problems in this car of your life, in which the carburetor may blow up or the exhaust pipe blows up, in which it's always blowing up every morning. Now, I know this is very easy to do this, but just remember, why don't you just take a potato and put it in the exhaust pipe? And do you know what will happen? The mechanism of the life of your car will just explode. So let it explode. Then say to yourself, this is none else but divinity. This is a metaphysical, philosophical idea to express to you the practicality of what life really should be. Most of us meditate to have fewer problems. Advanced meditators welcome problems. Bring them on. Put a potato in your tailpipe, blow the car up. Bring it on. There in the Buddhist tradition and the Tibetan tradition, which I was trained in, there is a saint called Milarepa, and he was this crazy yogi, he lived way up in the mountains, and he used to sing these doha, which were songs of spontaneous enlightenment. And he'd say, oh, the kleshas, which means the emotional turbulence, is really stirred up today. I'm feeling fantastic. Everything is going wrong, and I'm feeling great. What the heck is that about? In certain advanced meditation and Dzogchen practice, they said the greater the problems, the greater the realization, the greater the energy. And I'm just going to let you sit with that because Gururaj is running with this metaphor. So he said, just remember, just take a potato and go put it in your exhaust pipe. And you know what's going to happen? The mechanism of the life, of your life, the car will just explode. Well, then just let it explode and say to yourself, this is none else but divinity. Gururaj used this metaphor many times. He had this Rudyard Kipling poem. He said, if you could just keep your head when everybody else has lost theirs. You know, Rudyard Kipling is fantastically out of favor now, but he loved this poem. And what he meant is, spiritual practices, it's all God doing this. And we think that to ourselves until we get into trouble. And then we start screaming and cursing God and everything like. He said, no, it's just a play of divinity. Now you're involved in your beautiful car, let's say, and you polish it every Sunday morning or Sunday afternoon. In other words, you're always working on your life to get happy. But even without washing, that car will still run and keep on performing. The reason why you wash the car is to keep it clean on the exterior or to have exterior cleanliness. But how many times have we ever thought of cleaning the engine, cleaning the carbon from the carburetor? I don't know about these things. He's talking about the only thing that really will make your life go without any effort, believe it or not, is really sincere spiritual practice. With all of the stuff that it intends, it really will make your life go more smoothly. You may have lots of crap and shitstorms, but your life will go more smoothly. There's more to say about that, but maybe I should meditate then. Actually, it works best if you meditate with no motivation whatsoever. You just do it. You don't even know why you do it. It's ideal that way. But yes, your life, or maybe it's just you don't get as bothered by the shitstorms. These are the mechanics of life. What people try to do is to clean their exteriors, and yet they damn well stink. Don't I know it? This is him just carrying on. They put on their powders and their puffs and whatever other shit that they have, and they would know what, and you guys would know all about this, more about it than I would. What's the meaning of that, beloved? He's shifting quite a bit. What he's doing, he's still talking about, well, he's talking about why we find this thing about finding silence and going in silence to find total silence, why that's so difficult for us. And I'm going to throw in my editorial. It's because we're completely consumed and we're totally identified with, and we totally take serious our own little movie of me, my life, my movie. We take that dead seriously, even though we pretend not to. Say, what's the meaning of that? What's it going to take you? Where? It'll just take you to the cosmetic factory. Yeah, that's where you're going to end up. And you're going to spend a damn fortune there, which is just totally meaningless. Then you're going to spend all of your time and energy trying to make yourself happy. All the stuff, you're going to fix your life. But if you have the purity of heart within you, then you'll always remain totally fragrant within yourself. Smell me, if you like, any of you. Total fragrance, without any cosmetics, without any makeup, without any shit. Do you see what I'm trying to tell you, my beloveds? The principle is to be fragrant within yourself in purity. You can still use your cosmetics if you want to, like doing up your eyebrows in blue or purple or whatever shade you want. What do I know about it? Because when I'm with my beloved, I tell her to wash her face in the bathroom and to be herself. Now, this will plug in some people because they find it sexist language. Okay, be plugged in. Be my guest. He was a lover, and he liked love, and he liked not to talk about beloved, some abstract God or Krishna or somebody. He talked about ordinary conjugal love, people you're with, your chelas. He was an extraordinarily loving person. So he's using these metaphors, and he wants to make it very concrete and physical for us. How do you find purity? You don't find it by trying to not, forgive me, eat a really restricted diet and never be mean and meditate your brains out and be a good boy or girl. Bullshit, he would say. You find purity by being in silence. When I'm with my beloved, I tell her to wash her face in the bathroom and to be herself, totally pure. Please, this is a metaphor. It applies to boys and girls and all of us. He's talking about the face, the falsity we all have, the masks. Why can't we find in silence a purity? because we're completely involved with the falsity of our lives. We're always polishing the damn car instead of cleaning up the carburetor. That's important. I never want a woman who has cosmetics, but for my wife, my beloved, I want her to be totally clean and pure. These are practical lessons. Listen to these. I want her to be totally clean and pure, clean, without any cosmetics at all. Why must I fall in love with cosmetics, which are nothing but falsity? A lot of us say we want self-realization, but not as much as we want a healthy bank account. Not as much as we want our personal health. Not as much as we want all this other crap that we want. We want this and we want that. Then maybe, maybe we'll be in the mood for in silence. You know, the scriptures all promise. It's just promises. They say that if you find that, it's like finding a diamond buried in your backyard. Suddenly you've got no more financial issues at all. It's like you're sitting right on top of a fortune, a gigantic treasure, which you will never be really unhappy again if you find this treasure. And yet, do we really want to find it? I don't know. I think a lot of us prefer the cosmetics. We do ourselves up and we like the world to be nice and nice. We want it nice, nice, nice. Why must I fall in love with cosmetics, which are falsity? Do you know what the greatest industry in the world is devoted to the creation of cosmetics? So if my beloved kisses me passionately, am I kissing her sweet lips or am I kissing lipstick? The point is this: don't indulge yourself in a false mask. Indulge yourself in your reality. Remove that mask. The mask is falsity. Get to the next point, to become yourself. Be you. Be your own reality and feel the beauty that exists within you. Why do you guys fail to see the beauty that is within you? Why? Answer me. You fail to see the beauty within yourself because of the false masks that you've put upon yourself. You only see yourself through this mask, which is not really you. No, it's not really you. You observe yourself through this facade. I am a spiritual person. I am this, that, and the other. My movie. This is my life. I'm important. Don't you dare insult me. Me. I am what I think I am. I am what I think I am. And you out there exist to make me happy and confirm me in my opinions, right? Don't we all play that game? If you're pissed off at that, or you don't like it, or you don't think so, hey friend, do some spiritual practice and take a good, hard, cold look at who and what you think you are. He's saying you aren't that. That's what self-realization is about, is to realize what you really are. So he goes on. You observe yourself through that facade, that mask that you've created around yourself. And that's the reason why you lose the sense of your personal reality. It's all so simple, really. By the way, why would I go on and say, when we have horrible things happen to us, we should welcome them? Because nothing pulls you on your own bullshit more than when things go bad. Nothing calls us on our bullshit more than when things go bad. The movie of me. Why shouldn't you get cancer? Why not? Other people do all the time. Why shouldn't you die? You are anyway someday. What is it that is within yourself that never dies? It cannot die. What is that in you that this is just a hologram, a projection, a game, a TV show? What is that in you that is real? Gururaj is saying, through the Guru, he leads us into the silence and eventually to the silence. He leads us in silence, which I think is samadhi. The silence, the total silence, is self-realization. Where there's Gururaj, he had a cell. Oh my God, I'm going to try to hypothesize what that's like. Let's just say he was not an ordinary human being. He did everything that ordinary people do, plus some, quite a bit, including the various addictions and hang-ups and all that stuff like that. But he was not, oh God, then we're talking about the Guru. Let's just say he had a lot of fun in this life and a lot of sadness and a lot of tragedy. It was a very dramatic life. But in all of it, there was nothing in him to take offense. That makes sense. To a spiritual master, a realized being in communion with divinity, this is very simple. But to others, they might need a little bit more understanding and a little bit more spiritual practice and maybe a little bit more meditation and more diving deeper within. What on earth does that mean, to dive deep within? It means to pratyahara. All the stuff, the distractions around us, let that go. You can either, in silence, there is a kind of meditation which all of you have experienced where you're just there. Every once in a while, your attention, something else will flick and we will notice sounds and stuff like that. But if you're develop your pratyahara and your dhyana, your ability to concentrate, you just become like that candle flame. But that's actually just being silence. That's ordinary spiritual silence. That's not, that will, and by the, I'm leading in based on my study. The deeper, the self-realization is a gift of grace. It cannot be willed. As Gururaj says, it can't be created because it's uncreated. It's actually before any kind of creation, and it just happens. The flash of the moment. The effort goes into the preparation, as Gururaj says. Realization happens in the flash of the moment. The effort goes into the preparation. The deeper you go within yourself, the more you will discover yourself. Does it mean your hang-ups and your upsets? No, that is, you have no idea how, maybe you do. I shouldn't say that. It's absolutely, they're like dreams. They are just dreams. They're not real. They're like phantoms. The more you will discover yourself, but where is your real self? You tell me. Answer. Now he's looking at somebody in the audience. Here's how he says it. Keep saying my internet connection is unstable. But to others, they might need a little bit more understanding, a little bit more spiritual practices and more meditation and more diving deeper within, letting it go, finding that silence, pratyahara, withdrawing from the objects of distraction. The deeper you go within yourself, the more you will discover yourself. And again, he doesn't mean the ordinary self. That, I hope you guys realize, that is such a joke, you won't believe it. You suddenly realize, what am I, these are like less than daydreams. They're nothing. Where you went to school, it's just some bullshit you made up. Who cares? Your little traumas, you're broke, so what? The deeper you go within yourself, the more you'll discover yourself. For where is your real self? Tell me. Answer me this question, my beloved son. or daughter. We've known each other for so many years. You know that. Who are you? Are you that handsome, beautiful face? Is that what you are? Is that what you regard yourself to be? That's wrong. That is who you really are. God bless you, beloved. The other day when I was on a Zoom conversation with somebody, it's a friend. I was kidding her a little bit, and I said, I'm acting as your Kalyanamita, your spiritual friend. But I told her once, you have an issue with trust. You don't truly trust. And I won't tell you the whole story, but I just said, that's a Vajrayana moment. That's a guru moment. And actually, you're not doing it. Something else is doing it. That's what I think is going on with Gururaj here. He looks at, I think it's Sujay, it's probably he's talking to. Answer me this question, my beloved son. He really did love people, but he loved them completely impersonally. As he said, I don't love, I am love. He also talked about empathy, apathy. He would be totally there for you. And then as soon as you walked away and the next person came up, he'd completely forgotten about you and he was totally focused on the next person. Who's like that? God is like that. That's the love of God. God loves everything equally. We've known each other for so many years. You know that. Now, who are you? Are you this beautiful, handsome face? Is that what you are? Is that what you regard yourself to be? That's wrong. That is who you really are. Now, when you're interacting with a real guru, these moments can come and go, especially it's very intimate. And you have what they call in the Buddhist tradition, pointing out instructions. Somebody or something happens and suddenly you realize, oh, and you realize what's really going on. Then he wrote a little poem and I'll read it. A lot of us in our group, we make fun of his poems, and you can make fun of it if you want, or you don't have to. You can try to look, you can try to find what he's trying to say, which is just a great deal of affection, joy, and love. So let the sunshine forever flow in your life. Sunshine will ever flow in your life. Rain might come, but that will pass away soon. That sunshine will forever be there with you. Clouds might float by, but remember this, above those clouds there is that beautiful sky. So why should I be concerned with the clouds when I know the vastness of that beautiful sky? Sunshine would ever be there, and thanks to the shining of the sun that produces the clouds and the rain, that is giving you food for yourself to be sustained, it comes blessings, my beloved. For everything in life, everything has a counterpart. Imagine living in a state of grace like our Guru. Everything is beautiful. Wouldn't that be interesting? Because you have you don't have an ego involved in the game that has good and bad and suffers and wants to be happy and wants this and that. And you don't have any of that stuff. It's just, everything is just a spontaneous arising of divinity, and everything is just absolutely wonderful. Everything, the sun shines. You're always aware of the sky and the sun. The clouds come and go, problems happen, the car blows up. That has nothing to do with the sunshine and the empty sky. That's the in silence. Wouldn't that be nice? Or not, since by admiring it, out there, we don't see ourselves as that. Like he said, is it our beautiful face, what we think we are? No. Okay, it's 6 o'clock, so this one went pretty quick. And I'm going to open it up and we'll have a little chat. Let's see, is it still recording, Charlotte? I hope it is.